Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me in another of my wonderful interviews. Now, I don't know if you're aware that recently, I think it was 250,000 people descended on Parliament. They were complaining, shall we say, protesting about the two-tier police system. They were having a go at our Prime Minister. Many of them probably voted for him one way or another. Maybe they didn't realise they had, but that does seem to be what's going on. We're going to be talking about understanding the law and governance and this two-tier system with my guest today, Clive Edwards from Capillary Wave, who joins me now. Clive, welcome to the show.
Hi, Richard. Thanks for inviting me on.
It's an absolute pleasure. We have met in person. I've been down to see you. We've had a good old chat. We had a
Yeah.
lovely pub lunch. Now, I'm just saying that so that people don't think that I've been bribed in any way because we've had a nice pub lunch. It was very lovely. But I was keen to meet you because you have some very interesting ideas on law and lawfulness, and we've been looking at that on the show for, well, many months really, ever since I got going on all of this. So it's a pleasure to have you on the show. You've got some interesting ideas, and I think people would be very wise to have a listen and make their own minds up.
Well, thank you, Richard. Yeah, and as you say, it's right that you mentioned that because I invited you here to see what I've been doing because I didn't want to just come on your show and talk about this stuff without. I live this life. I walk the walk, if you like, and as you know, because you've seen it, I'm building a farm without planning permission,
Yes,
um, which
I'm
is
very impressed, I have to say.
yeah, yeah. So I'm glad that you came down and seen with your, for yourself firsthand exactly what's involved. I'm not just a talking head on the internet,
Yeah.
and that's why I've come out into the public really now recently, and is to impart, if you like, some of the things I've learned on my journey through the planning system, and it took me straight into the heart of law and governance. I've been into the heart of the court systems. I've helped other people at court, and even went to the High Court and kept a guy out of prison. It's Robert Fiddler down in Surrey, who built a castle behind hay bales, and his local council, Reigate Council, had a committal hearing at the High Court, and Rob got me involved, and we kept him out of prison. So I've been on a bit of a journey through this, through my own planning issues and planning enforcement. It jumps you straight into an indictable offence, which if you don't see through what the council have asked you to do, they can put you in prison. I know some people who've been to prison for planning offences. So it's a serious matter. It's not parking tickets, and as I say, this is sort of led me into on a it's totally took my life on a totally different tangent than it was previously on. And for the last 15, 16 years now, I've been dedicated my life to studying law and governance. And I feel now, with the state of the country, if you like, the way things are going, it's time for me to come out and have a bit of a chat about it and try and help people understand what's going on.
Well, we very much appreciate you doing that because I think you have been at a sharp end in many ways.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And I say I've been to court, but I've been to other people's court cases who sort of hired me for help and advice, if you like, because my council won't take me to court. Now, that's quite an
It's
interesting
quite,
thing in itself, and
yes.
I understand why they won't take me to court, and that's going to be part of what we get into today, because there are people with, as we've touched on, who had really serious planning problems. I one guy comes to mind. I'm sure he won't mind me mentioning his name because he is out there on the internet and has been talking about it with your friend Chris Brooks. Is a chap, a farmer called Danny Beach. I'm not sure where his council is running me council. So I'm not sure what area that it's down south somewhere, probably near you, in between me and you, probably Somerset and Brighton sort of way.
Yes, I mean, it must be Surrey, I suppose, Runnymede.
Right, yeah. Well, he's down that neck of the woods, and how the council treated him was just absolutely abhorrently. But as I'll explain today, as we go through a few things today, we'll understand why that happened to him, and perhaps why my local council didn't want to tackle me. But that's the two extremes. And as you rightly said in your introduction, I'm here really to talk about the two-tier system that everyone's talking about at the moment.
They
There was a
are.
big rally held in London at the weekend, 200 odd thousand people, if not more. Toby Robinson held it, and he's since been imprisoned. And if he understood some of the things that we're going to talk about today, I very much doubt that he'd be in prison. But
Yes.
so it's going to be interesting. Let's hope anyway.
No, I hope so. I mean, because also we've got. I've somebody was telling me that the farmers are planning on descending down. I think Wednesday coming as we record this. I don't know whether that's accurate, but I know that the farmers are under a lot of stress and a lot of pressure, and they're fed up with government diktats, and so they want to make make their own noises. But again, it may all come to nothing if they don't understand pretty much who they are and what they can do or should do.
Exactly. Well, what we're going to talk about today will help all members of society, because people are right. There's a lot of complaining about a two-tier system. There is, in fact, and in place in law, a two-tier system. That is correct, and most of the public chose the lowest tier. Uh, but we'll get into that. And
Right.
so some of the speakers at the rally, some of your audience may even share some of these views of some of the speakers on last Saturday at the rally were on stage, and they were mentioning such things as Keir Starmer's not my prime minister, and the king is not my king. They were saying, so this is all relevant to law and governance. This is all, if you like, my speciality, what I spent a lot of time looking into, and what my
Yes.
website sort of explains to people. Perhaps now would be a good time to tell people, your audience, that there's a page that me and my website guy Slim, shout out to Slim. We've made a page for this discussion that your audience can go to and follow along with, because we're going to have a general discussion here today. I don't want to get in too much into what's happened to me because it's boring. It just affects me. But we can broaden the discussion out to the countrywide issues, if you like, and how they affect everyone. And so they can follow along if they follow the link. I believe you put it in the description.
I will. Yes, it will be in the description. And if you can't find it, some people are on smartphones and smart TVs or that sort of thing, and they're watching and they say, "Oh, I can't see the description." So I will just say it is capillarywave.com/Vobes, and if you put that in, you should get to the page. So
That's
you
right.
can have that on your laptop and have a look if you've got a big telly and all of those things, and follow along.
So what there's no way in a sort of roughly an hour chat that we can get into the real nitty gritty of everything. So we're going to have a general discussion about it,
Sure.
and some of it will be sort of common sense and logical, and the sort of the latter part of this chat will be more technical. It'll be getting into some of the technicalities around how the legal system operates on citizens. So that will be a bit more technical, but again, we can touch on it. We won't have time to go into everything into great detail. So this chat may actually leave people with more questions than they
Oh,
got answers,
yes,
because
sure
yeah,
it will.
yeah, it may start pulling at a thread that it's like a rabbit hole, so to speak. That yeah, a lot of us have gone down already. So as I said, my story is I've got involved with planning permission thing struggles, and I've had 9 enforcement notices against me, and that caused me to start looking at law. And as I say, I've dedicated a large portion of my life to studying law and governance. And um, there is there is, like I said, there is a two-tier system in place, and when um, when we sign up to the voting system, that relegates us to the lowest tier. So most of your audience here will be citizens of the United Kingdom, and that the very fact of becoming a citizen is what relegates us to being a commoner, what's known as a commoner at law, and that's what the House of Commons. We're called commoners because we're members of the House of Commons. If you're a voter, you become a member of the House of Commons. Yeah. So if for those following along at home, on the page we've supplied, I there's a drawing there of the two tiers of states, and some of the listeners might find some of what I'm about to say a little bit difficult because the two tiers of state come down to government and God, and a lot of people will automatically turn off when you mention the God word.
Right.
But the whole system of governance, especially in a Christian country, which this is, and all of the Commonwealth countries, so Canada, Australia, New Zealand, all of these, basically every country in the Western world that speaks English follows our system pretty much, and it's all based entirely on the Bible. The Queen, the Queen's coronation, is she's given the Bible by the Archbishop, and he says to her, "This is the greatest gift the world affords." Um, there's an act of Parliament called the ratification of confession of sorry the Confession of Faith Ratification Act of 1560, which states that the Bible is the word of God and it's the infallible truth, and that means it's exempt from error. Um, so, as I say, the foundation of the system of governance is based upon the Bible, and the two-tier system boils down to the government and God. And as I say, on the page that's associated our website that we've dedicated for this chat, you'll see that system in a diagram I put together, I've drawn. And not many people know that the King Charles, in his coronation, wears two hats. He's got two hats of office. One is the St. Edward's crown, which is the crown of God, and he puts that on in a special little ceremony within the coronation itself, behind within some curtains. The public can't see that bit. That's the crown of God, St. Edward's crown. There's another crown for the ceremony, which is the imperial crown. And imperial means Roman, so there's a Roman crown, and that's so the King Charles has got two roles of office, and you're going to see this. So the two roles of state, I'll just go through briefly now.
Sure.
The king has two roles. He serves God and rules over persons. Judges swear two oaths. Not a lot of people know that, but
That
judges have to swear two oaths. One is an office of the United Kingdom, and one is to God. So just like the king serves God on the one hand, he also rules over the persons of the United Kingdom on the other. Judges do the same. They have an office of the United Kingdom, but they also serve God. Even a police officer has two roles of office. One is a policy enforcer for the United Kingdom, enforcing the policies that are passed at the Houses of Commons, and the other is an oath to be a constable. And an oath is a solemn promise to a deity. So, as I say, whether people understand it completely or not, that God is involved in governance. Even the role of constable is under God. And then that even falls down to the level of local councils. And again, not a lot of people know that, but if you look at your local council's constitution, that breaks down into they have a duty towards the electorate, which are the persons of the United Kingdom, and the people. And I've supplied evidence of that again in the page to go along with this discussion of a local council's constitution, where it clearly states the duty to the electorate and the people. So again, the police constable's oath is to the people, not the persons of the United Kingdom, but to the people, and that's God's people, if you like. Again, we're just generalizing a little bit here. We can't
yes.
get right into the nitty gritty of all of it, but in general terms, when we're talking about people, that's on the God side of the two tiers of governance, two tiers of the state, and the persons of the United Kingdom, which we'll get into a bit in a minute. So those are the two areas concerning with law and governance, and that's across all of the Commonwealth. You've got the government, which rules over the United Kingdom or Canada or Australia, rules over their persons, and they the other side of their jurisdiction, if you like, is God's people, and that's why there's two oaths of office. That's why the king has two crowns, and why police swear an oath. So, when people say the government are supposed to work for us, now that's a bit of a loaded statement because governments and the king do serve God's people, but when we turn ourselves from a people to persons of the state, now you've changed your status, and they
Right.
don't serve you anymore. They rule over you.
So,
Um,
so, so am I right in saying you've got these two jurisdictions, and it
yes,
depends which jurisdiction you're on, and people are unaware mostly that they could be in the jurisdiction which is run by the Bible. And for clarity, you're not saying you have to be religious to understand any of this. It's just that's how the judicial system is using the Bible as its its
yes, the foundation,
primary,
if you like.
yeah, the
Yeah,
foundation, the King James Bible.
that's right.
So
Yeah, if even if you're an atheist, um, if you're an atheist, really, it's irrelevant what you believe. If you're a citizen, it's absolutely irrelevant. That is what
right,
is. That's de facto. That's
yeah,
happening. So yeah, even so, an atheist can have their, if you like, their belief that they can follow atheism. But if they're a citizen, they've already consented to the fact that the Bible is the infallible truth because they're a subject of the king. The king accepts the Bible and 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 swears that it's the infallible truth, but it's exempt from error.
yes. I mean, the sad reality, it seems to me, from what you've said, is that most people do not know of the other jurisdiction because they've been so
Absolutely.
brainwashed to being Mr. Fred Bloggs of 23 Acacia Avenue, in case you're passing. And they have been told that you have to vote and all these things. And we've been sent down a blind alley, as it were, not being given a proper choice to say, well, you could be this, or you could be the people of God
Well,
and under a different jurisdiction.
yeah, that's it. This stuff's been in front of us our entire lives, but as you say, we're not. It's not that we're not given the choice. If you like, as soon as we get into schools and the school system, we're just pointed and faced 100% in facing east, if you like.
Yeah.
And yet the lawful jurisdiction under God and under the Bible and being one of the people, which is where all the authority and power is west. And we're never
Yes.
told about west. We're just
No.
told face east and on you go, be a good little citizen and keep walking east.
And keep
And
paying the bills.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And some of us have had a look over our shoulder and thought, hang on a minute, surely it's who's the authority here and start questioning authority like I did. I mean, I really had to, I was ignorant to everything. I was completely ignorant to the law. And I liken it to being in a dark cave. And I was just feeling around in the dark. I knew nothing. So I just started it like from a child's perspective, from literally from like a child. And it's like, how does this system work? I had no ego tied up in it. My profession's not tied up in it. My identity's not tied up in understanding all this. So for me, it was just a case of I have to find out, otherwise I could go to prison. Like it was very likely I'd go to prison because some of the fines for failure to comply with enforcement notices. If you opt to go to Crown Court, which you can for an indictable offence, it's unlimited fines, and they're generally in the region of £20,000 is sort of the average fine. Well, there's no way I would have paid that fine just out of principle, apart from anything else. I would not have paid that fine, so I would have pretty much gone to prison. So for me, it was a case of, I have to find out how this works. I can't go on
Yes.
people's opinions. And all of this information that we've supplied with again from the with this with the web page here that people can follow along with, it's all evidenced by the Crown. Like you don't have to go on some crazy conspiracy to try and understand this, or someone's opinion down the pub, or even a talking head on the internet like myself. You you can just go and find out, go direct to source, and follow the people who the government tell you what to do. So why not find out what the government say is true? And for instance, every day before Parliament, I'm not sure how many people wear this, but every day before Parliament, all there's MPs have a prayer session, and they only accept the Christian faith in Parliament. So before Parliament starts, there's prayers, and judges. Another thing might be unaware of, it's all of the legal system, all the high offices in the judiciary, every year, they mark the start of the legal year at Westminster Abbey, and they have a service to God. It's like a prayer sheet,
Right.
and they have prayers, and all the top judges go there. and so the monarchs and archbishops maybe, and you can find that online. I've linked it and I've evidenced it. And like I say, everyone's pretty aware of the coronation oath, and we see that every sort of 70 years, and it gets forgotten about. But every single year, the judges, the people that rule over you and send people to prison for planning offences, they go to a ceremony, and they follow a different law, which is the Bible's sometimes referred to as the royal law.
And the people in the House of Commons that we vote in as citizens, if you're a citizen, they are ministers. I mean, the name itself sort of says, mostly a minister you would think of as a minister of God. They're a ministering.
Exactly. A very good point. And that is because the powers that be, most people have heard the phrase, oh, it's the powers that be. Well, that is a phrase from the Bible, and that's in Romans 13:1. And the powers that be, it says the full sentence is the powers that be are ordained by God. So if they're ordained by God, that's why there's ministers, as you said, operating out of ministries. And that's the same across the Commonwealth. So that is because of what it says in the Bible. we are
Right.
we are being governed by what it says in the Bible. And another thing that people don't fully understand, like people will, like at this rally, I'll go back to this rally in London. There's 250,000 people there. They're all pointing and saying the government this, the government that. Well, they probably don't fully understand that they are the government. They're all voters that are unhappy. Most of them there, most of those there sort of voted Reform or certainly didn't vote for Keir Starmer and the Labour government. But the voting system is the consent.
The voting system is
So
the consent.
whether you vote for, if you let's just say if you vote for fill out a voter register to because some people say, well, I've never signed it's like a contract. They'll talk about contracts and there's no evidence of my agreement. Well, if you're on the voting register, there is evidence or there's written evidence of your agreement to the system. So even people that vote Reform and give their consent to the Labour government, that's how the voting system works. So if you vote for the Blue Party, who are pro-war, and um, if you vote, let's say you vote for the Red Party or anti-war, but the Blue Party get in who are pro-war, you're going to war, and there's every chance actually because you've now voted for that, you'll be conscripted too, just to add insult to injury.
Nice people.
Yeah, that's the trick. That's the system. Two wings of the same bird, and that is true. That's why the government are a body, but every body needs a head, and the head of the government's the crown. And the government always go where the crown wants to go. The body will follow the head, and the crown is the head, um, and the government are the body. So, yeah, the voting for government gets you involved in that system, and it really is irrelevant. As people are finding out now, there's a lot of people who voted for Reform and voted Tory who are really unhappy with the way what Labour are doing, but they've given their consent to Labour by the act of voting itself.
Yes.
And there's a lot of people at the moment that are saying things like Keir Starmer doesn't have a mandate. He only got 9 million votes, which is the capital, works out to be about the population of London. And there are people that are MPs of Parliament that are saying this. These are people involved in the system that don't understand how the system works. Again, I've got no skin in the game. All I care about is how the system works to avoid prison. I don't care about politics. I don't care about the Red Party, the Blue Party. All I care about is staying out of prison. So all I care about, I don't care about someone who thinks what. I need to know what is. And Keir Starmer has got a mandate because he may have only got 9 million of the red voters voting for him, but he got all the other blue voters and every other denomination out there that voted. They've all consented to the system that allows him to be prime minister. So he
Right.
has,
It's the
yeah,
whole voting process that you've kind of agreed that the best man wins, and then what he says goes, and you all follow because that's effectively
absolutely.
that's the game you've all been
That is
playing.
the game. They get one party and then they get the other party opposed. It's like a Punch and Judy show. I liken it to. And I don't
Yeah.
mean to insult people out there. I was the same prior to 2007. I thought pretty much like all the other commoners who
Yeah.
don't really understand. As I say, these are MPs of Parliament who're saying that Keir Starmer doesn't have a mandate. Well, he does. And if the guys that are involved in the system don't fully understand, not
Well,
much chance that we're
I
going
was
to.
going to say, what chance have we got?
Yeah, yeah.
But knowing that that is the situation, I suppose people watching this will be saying, okay, we've understood that. I'll take myself off the electoral roll. I'm not going to vote in future. I'm not going to be part of that system. How then do you make that shift from being a citizen, as most people are, and moaning about the outcome of a game that you played and agreed to be part of, and part of that agreement was whoever wins dictates? How do you then move out of that system into a system that is you become people, or man and
Really
women?
easy because that's a really interesting point actually, and it's really easy because if you like, you've reversed the way that I was going to tackle this,
Oh, I'm
and
so no. Well,
because
you go
no,
as
no,
your
no, because no, it's a absolutely fascinating point because you have to become something you're not to be involved in the government. You have to become a person of the state, and if you like, we'll just flip back. So you are by default people created by God.
right.
That's clear. That's common sense, isn't it? That I
Yeah.
mean, if the government themselves accept that the Bible's infallible truth, exempt from error, it says in the Bible that God created people. Let's just again, we're just going to have to generally tiptoe
Yeah.
across the tops of all this. We can't possibly get involved. I mean, I do that at the website. I get drilled down deeper in the website, but we've got limited time here, so we have to ice skate across the top of it. But that's common sense. God created people, so by default we are people. But what the government do is trick us into becoming something we are not, and that is persons. So in the Bible warns, believe it or not, the Bible, and this is one of the things that made me wake up to the Bible when I was just an ignorant citizen like everyone else. The Bible was talking about not accepting man's person. At Job 32:21 to 22, it says, neither ye basically accept man's person or titles. And I thought, wow, that's what government has jurisdiction over. And when I started working out some of these things, it's like, so the Bible was telling you not to be man's person, and the government only has jurisdiction over persons.
Yes.
So these are vitally important because I undone some of these ties that put me under the jurisdiction of the government, and therefore the council could have told me what to do, when to build. When they say jump, ask how high. Like unfortunately happened to Danny Beach with Runnymede Council. I undone some of those ties, and again, we're default people, aren't we?
Mm.
So there's evidence of, if you like, your consent, and they'll take consent. If you're, I often refer it to like the government running a duck farm, and it sounds a bit silly, but I'll explain it. Is if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, and quacks like a duck, it's a duck,
Yes.
and therefore, if most people have consented to that system, if you like, the duck farm of governance, so there's evidence. But even if people that haven't signed up to be a registered voter, which is one of the key things that gets you into being one of their persons, if you're on the duck farm, walking like a duck, quacking like a duck, and accepting the benefits from the duck farmer, if you like, then they'll treat you as one of theirs. So it's like, come on in, it's open house, come in. You're under us. So they will accept that, and the specific act of parliament that transfers us from a people to persons is the Representation of the People Act 1867. It's not the Representation of the Persons Act; it's the Representation of the People Act. So and I break it down. If they represent people as persons, and that's just one of that act just explains how you go from being a man created by God and one of the people to, again, this is the legal realm. This is some of the technicalities that because they can't change what you are, but if you
No.
believe you become if you believe you're one of these citizens, then they'll accept you in the club.
So is this? I mean, and a lot of my viewers will understand the term legal fiction, and will understand the birth certificate to a certain degree, and understand that that's being created. It's not. It's not them. It is all caps name, and there is, you carry this label, as it were, and And I suppose most people would argue, but you've got to be identified somehow when they write a letter, so they need to write your name and all of that. But I think a lot of my viewers will have understood from all the conversations that we had is that there's you as a man or woman that was born and has blood and guts and all the other, bits and pieces that make
Yeah,
us.
one of
And
God's people. Yeah,
one of God's people with the soul inside you, or however you wish to describe that. And then there's this legal version that
that's right.
isn't you,
Yeah,
but right from going to school, you believe, when your surname is read out, you put your hand up, Vobes, yes, here, sir,
yeah,
you've consented to, and throughout your life, all the documents that you get, you're in that system, and you get to the point where you actually believe that you are a name because it sounds very similar to a name that
yeah.
your mum and dad gave you.
That's right. Yeah, I think there's no coincidence. That's why at school for like 12 years or however long we're at school, they do a registration twice a day. Well, they used to when I was at school anyway, in the
Yeah,
morning and in the afternoon. And they read out your full, that's the legal name that they read out. And they drill that into you every single day you're at school.
yeah,
Um, Again, they get you facing east. We talked about, used the allegory of like the legal lot get you facing east. Well, all the power and all the it lies when you sort of start walking west in the opposite direction. And again, I've on this web page that we've got going along with this chat that I've evidenced the legal name, and that's the legal name is under common law, so it's a legal, it's an instrument of the law, and that's why again I don't want to get involved in the birth certificate because that'll probably put some, it'll put some people off when you start talking about the birth certificate, what it is and what it isn't.
yeah.
What we can say for sure is because I've evidenced it again is that it says at the bottom of my birth certificate there's a warning and it says not to be used as evidence of identity. So that
Yeah.
document is telling you do not use this to tell people who that it's you.
Even though you're asked by the world of government all the time for everything, a bank account or anything, can you supply the passport? Can you show us your birth certificate? Even though it says this is not to be used to identify you. I mean, it's remarkable, isn't it, that people go along with that?
Yes, absolutely. And as you say, the the document itself tells you it's not to be used for identification purposes. And what we do, we go out and use it for exactly what it tells us what not to use it for. So, and that's another part of the trick. So they get us to lie. It's all based on a lie. It's based on a fraud that we go about. Again, I don't want to get into too much of but
No.
that is the evidence of the legal name, if you like, and the legal name is there in the law dictionary, which I've evidenced. It's under common law. So, and the deed poll site, which again is in the link, tells you that a legal name is not a name in the ordinary sense. It's a new construction.
Yeah.
So that is what you name you own or you have control over. Let's put it like that. So obviously, if I name my dog, I have control over it. And a dog's quite a good analogy because if you like, the dog's already got a name, and the name of a dog is dog, and we call it something else. So I called my dog, one of my dogs, Diesel, but that's not what its name is. So the government, like, we've got a name, and that name is man or Adam, if you like. That's what the Bible says. And the government, that's on the people side. So we've got a name. God gave us a name. And then the government have created a legal name so that you can identify with the government and be something else.
Mm.
Again, so these are, I don't want to get into the nitty gritty of that here now, but it's worth pointing on. It's worth touching on these things because these are the things that give away control. And if you accept these things, that's when they'll get jurisdiction over you. And I step back from some of these things. I step back from that legal name and I step back from being a citizen of the state. And that is what then enabled me ultimately that the council have left me alone.
Right. Yes.
And
And I suppose, I mean,
yeah,
people, that's what people want to know, isn't it? Because most people are feeling the pressure and they're going, actually, it's not fun, really, being this citizen. And they've heard rumours that you can be in the West instead of in the East. And most people want to do that. And so it comes to that question I asked earlier: how do then people say, okay, I'm not going to be your citizen anymore and pay all these bills and be under your jurisdiction, because who gives you the power to have any power over me if we're all born equal?
Yeah. So at the moment, all these citizens are out there using a legal name that's not theirs and acting as something they're not, which is a person of the state. The state created the person. It's a legal fiction. So you just by default, it's like if you work down at Tesco's and you want to now go and work at Aldi, you just hand your notice in. Everyone knows how to hand notice in for their work.
Yes.
You just say, I'm giving you a week's notice because I'm off with the other lot. I'm going to work for Aldi now. Thanks ever so much for employing me. It's been great, but I'm off. Here's my week's notice. So it's no different with government. You signed up to that system. You applied to be part of it. So you could just hand them notice. That's what a notice is, and just say, relinquish and rescind that consent of the governed. That's the consent of the governed. You can relinquish that consent and step back into the other jurisdiction, the other tier of state, which is the highest tier and of the highest position of the highest authority. We gave that authority away, and you can go and claim it back in this other position.
And so to do that, you would write to the various departments of government and just say, thanks for all the fish, I'm off.
That's right. Yeah, take some time and look. But well, I'll give you a clue. To attorn, when you attorn, it means to turn away from one lord and pledge allegiance to another. That's what the word attorn means. It means to turn away. So you were facing east, you attorned, and then you went west. Sorry, you were facing west, and you attorned and went east, and pledged allegiance to the government. That's why they have an attorney general.
I was going to say, is that where that term comes from?
Yeah, yeah. That's what the attorney general. He's in charge of all the attorneys. So you were under the Lord, like our Lord who art in heaven. We all know, we all learned that at school, perhaps. Those of a certain age, I know they don't do
Yes,
that at
no,
school
that's
anymore.
true. Yeah,
Yeah. So you turned away from one Lord. And so even the atheists have pledged allegiance to a different Lord. And I know it's a lot to wrap your head around, but I've written an article called The Atheist Delusion, which actually explains some of this. Um, yeah, you're under a new lord now, and that's why. So I'll just touch on what a country is, and we'll get onto a district, which explains that lord relationship and
right.
where citizens are within districts and within the country. So most people are confused as to what a country is. If you said to most people at that rally were there because they weren't happy about the way the country was going, and but a country is not the green, the green grass we see out there, and which most people, the White Cliffs of Dover, for example, that isn't what a country is. A country is very. We're talking about legal things here, and at law, a country is a polity, which is a legal fiction. It's a body politic.
Right.
That's what a country is. So a country isn't a physical thing. It's a construction of the law.
Yes. So land is a real thing.
Well,
Oh, hello. I'm
yeah,
jumping the gun. I'm
no, no,
jumping. I'm
no,
sorry.
yeah, no. The legal lot do a little trick with that, but
Right.
so you're right. Just like persons aren't people
Yeah.
in the Bible, God called the land he named the land Earth.
Earth.
Yeah. So again, I don't want to
No,
stop
no,
putting
no. I
people off
don't
by
want
getting
to.
into the
Yeah.
weeds. But so let's just stick with a country at the moment. A
Yeah.
country is a body politic, okay?
Okay.
It does not exist in reality. It's a creation of the law. And so are
Right.
persons, because a people cannot live in a country. If the country is a body politic, people cannot live in a body politic. So the United Kingdom is the body politic, and Britain is the landmass. So you can verify this yourself just by going on Wikipedia and typing in go find United Kingdom on Wikipedia, and what it will come up will be a flag and it'd be a coat of arms. So these are things that represent the body politic. But when you
Yes.
go and search Britain on Wikipedia, you'll see the White Cliffs of Dover and like the landmass. So one's based in reality and one is a legal fiction. And people cannot live in a legal fiction because just common sense, in common sense terms. So the
Yes.
government created these persons which live in the United Kingdom. again, a legal fiction living in a legal fiction, so to speak. But the
Yes.
people live at Britain.
So this is your players that Shakespeare talks about. The players are on the stage. The stage is England, and the actors are acting on the stage of England
Yeah,
because it's all a legal term. It's not real. It's
Shakespeare.
paper. It's a paper world.
Yeah, Shakespeare also said like God gave you a face and you go and make yourself another one. This is so
Yeah.
that's exactly what's happened. Like he understood very well what was going on. So God created people and gave you us an earth to inhabit, if you like, and then man created then these legal fictions, which is like God says, don't one of the commandments is don't make yourself any graven images. And so if you like, that's Bible speak for legal fictions.
Hmm.
A graven image is a legal fiction. It's a creation of the mind.
Yes. It's
And
dead. A dead entity. A graven image.
corporation, yeah,
Yeah.
corporation. That's why these words have meanings. And yeah, so man created these legal fictions, and that's what the United Kingdom is, illegal fiction, and these persons that we think we are. So by default, as you say, to step out of it, you just relinquish that and revert back to what you already are.
So would you say then that you are a man of the earth? Is that what you would, if you're coming back to the purest form?
Yeah, I suppose biblically that is a correct statement. I cannot fault that. That is a correct statement. Yeah. You cannot, yeah, again, exactly. So like you can't be a person of the earth because God didn't create persons.
Yeah.
Persons aren't in Genesis 1. And there's various positions, places in the Bible, which I've listed again, which say do not accept man's person. Don't be if you transgress the law as a person, you commit sin. Like the Bible says to you, don't do it. And what do? We go and do it. And
Yeah.
even the legal side, the Supreme Court judge Brett Kavanaugh, he's a U.S. Supreme Court judge. Um, I've evidenced his swearing in ceremony, where in his swearing in ceremony, he swears not to be a respecter of persons. That's a Supreme Court judge. So this is where Tommy Robinson would do well to sort of understand some of this, because you've got a Supreme Court judge telling you, I swear on an oath to be no respecter of persons.
Of
Yet most
persons.
people in these courts who appear before these judges are there appearing a as a
As
person.
persons.
Yeah.
Yes.
You have to appear as one because you are not one. If that makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah. You can't play their game
Yeah,
by
yeah.
being.
Yeah. If you appear to be something, you're being something that you're not,
Right.
is another way of
Yes.
saying it.
Yes.
So when these citizens of the United Kingdom go into the courts, as Tommy Robinson was in recently, he wasn't there. The judge wasn't interested about his documentary. The judge gave him an injunction not to play it, and he went to prison because he defied the judge's injunction. So the judge went to prison because he didn't do as the judge said. Not there's nothing. It wasn't in such about the content of the documentary itself. It's because he didn't follow the judge's orders. Well, if he was following the biblical orders, he would be there in a much stronger position, not as a person of the state. So
Mm.
basically, he was in there as an unruly person of the state, and the judges are no respecters of persons. It's like you haven't done what I've told you. You're going to prison, sunshine. So this
Yes.
is this is where it becomes important. And as I say, I'm not toying around with this. I built a farm, as you witnessed down in Somerset,
I have. Yeah.
and I'm not doing it as a person of the state because I wouldn't be allowed to do it as a person of the state. You've got to put your hand up and ask the boss if, please, boss, can I build my family a house or a dwelling, as they would call it. But I haven't done that. We were given dominion over the earth, and yeah, I've I've stepped outside of that jurisdiction. But that's not to say you're lawless, because now you're being held to a higher account of law. You're being held to the royal law,
Right.
if that makes sense.
And so the royal, how does that work then? Are you saying that so the king, if he's doing his job correctly,
Yeah.
he is there to look after you as
Yes.
people?
Serve God's people and rule over persons. He's there to put the jackboot on the persons.
Mm.
God's told in the book of the law, the infallible truth, that all serious members of state have sworn is the truth, and they swear an oath, and they all accept that's the truth. In that book of truth, it says, "Don't become a person. Don't set yourself up in countries, and don't become a person." We all did that. So then one of the king's job is, and judges, as we just discussed, is there to put the jackboot down on these persons because you chose that system and you went against what was stated in the Bible.
What if you, I don't know whether this is on your thing, but what if the king is not operating as he should? If he's not serving the people?
Well, I feel that once you present yourself, or once you undo those ties, I'm living proof that you can exist as a people and you will be left alone. I mean, I live quite a peaceful life. I don't really choose to come on the internet and start spouting about all this stuff. Well, I've got a farm to build. I've got a life to get on with, but I can see that things are getting seriously bad out there for people. When we've just been through COVID and all of that nonsense, and I think things are going to get a lot worse in the very, very near future. And if you're
Mm.
still a citizen of the state, then things are going to get seriously bad for you. And there's another option. That's what I'm basically trying to let people know.
Yes. What happens, for example, then if you are one of the people and you're in the West and you're doing everything as you should do, but something happens to you by the government who treat you wrongly, damage you in some way, put fluoride in the water or stick something in the air that makes you ill,
Yeah.
and those sort of things that you've not, you stepped out, you're in your farm, you're living a peaceful life, but you're being affected
Yeah.
by a government who is still trying to sort of deal with persons.
True. Yeah. And I don't want this to get into a real. I'm trying to appeal to a broader public who perhaps don't follow the Bible, don't understand the Bible, and don't really understand how they're being governed. Clearly, most
Mm.
people don't. I mean, I've seen it. Most people would agree that Keir Starmer's not my prime minister. We've been through a lot of these things, and clearly he is. Like we've already. So most people don't understand how they're being governed, so they won't understand some of the bigger. I mean, those are big things. They're biblical things, really. Like you could say, in the Bible, it talks about like there being a one world government and all this, and that's a satanic thing.
Mm.
And clearly, that's where we're heading because the WEF seems to be. Klaus Schwab has said they train up the prime ministers and people of the future. They got people in every cabinet. He's been quoted as saying. So, like, is he the government then? Because when the COVID-19 was going on, we were getting all our directives from the WHO and the WEF. They sort
Yes.
of circumvented local governments. I'm not even sure whether like national governments are a thing anymore. Who?
So, well, this is it. I mean, I'm just trying to sort of think, what's the advantage then for people? Should it be that if more people, I mean, and a considerable number of people go to the West, the government's persons jurisdiction starts to wither away, because the more people you have saying, well, actually, well, this is how we live because we're people, we're not governed by you, and
Yeah.
so the ones and twos, like yourself in a little farm, there would be no way you could put things like fluoride into the water, or have aeroplanes that affect the ones and twos who are living as men and women. Once the majority of people understand the two-tier system that you've just described, and
Yeah.
the more that people say, actually, yeah, no, this is wrong, I'm not a person, I'm one of the people, I'm going over west, and the more people that do that, that's where salvation is.
Absolutely. And this is why I believe this is like Tommy Robinson is public enemy number one at the moment. And I believe, and I don't even think he understands fully why he is, because that guy got 200,000 people in Parliament Square chanting Christ is King. He's openly stated on stage that they're not a political movement, it's a cultural movement. Well, the state aren't interested in that at all because they've already got a king, and they're not interested in a cultural movement. They want a political movement. They would love, I'm sure, nothing more than Tommy Robinson to form Reform 2 or whatever you want to call it. And then they would then get all his supporters voting for Tommy Robinson and thus
Yes.
giving again uh jurisdiction to Keir Starmer or whoever. What's frightening for the state is he's not forming a political movement. So everything he's saying is outside of the box. He's in Parliament saying Christ is King. Well, that's directly opposite to government because on the one hand, King Charles is the head of the government on the political side. He serves God's people, but he's also again it goes back to that the powers that be were ordained by God. So those people that don't want to be people and opted to be under the political system have to be governed because they're unruly, as we can see what's going on in the country now is falling to pieces, isn't it? So they're there. I liken police officers to like babysitters with truncheons. These people have to be governed, and they are being governed quite really strictly. What Tommy Robinson's a threat to the political establishment itself because he's saying we're a cultural movement, and he's also, like I say, he's had loads of Christian people on stage shouting "Christ is King" and all of this, which is polar opposite to what they want. They want a political system. They can control a
Yes.
political opponent is controllable, and
When you
that's why
when
I
you
believe he's dangerous.
right when you say the policemen are babysitters with truncheons, do the police and I mean, you mentioned at the beginning that the ministers they understand what's going on because they have to go and take an oath or they're going through the motion. They may not fully understand it, but when you get down to the sort of your Bobby on the street, who if you say to them, "Are you acting as a constable?" Do they really know that? Oh, this is now I'm acting in the sort of the more of the God's people department rather than the policies that I'm supposed to operate for the UK corporation.
I don't believe they understand it to be the two different jurisdictions. I think a police officer understands when he's acting in the role of officer, the company's liable, not him or her.
Yeah,
So they've got corporate liability. But when they're operating in the office of constable, they're personally liable. So that they
that's
understand.
as far as it goes with their
I
understanding.
believe so. I don't
Yeah.
believe, yeah, I don't believe many understand fully what the oath is about. And the oath specifically there is to protect people.
Yes, but if they don't understand, and you say, "Look, I'm a man, I'm not a person," and they're just going, "I don't know
Yeah,
what that
they
means."
don't care
It,
about
it,
that because
it,
to be fair, Richard, most of the public don't understand either.
no, I know. I mean, this is the problem. It's got so I mean, what you've described, when you look at it sort of on paper, there's this side that is lawful and for the people and God's people, and then there's this side that is effectively from common sense perspective is unlawful, and it's all about persons under a dictatorship, which people have acquiesced to through ignorance and carried on doing because they don't really know about the other system. It sounds okay, but actually it's so messy now because you've got the people like the police that we used to look up to and respect who don't even know the rights and wrongs of it themselves. And so you've got people like me and my viewers thinking, well, I want to be in the West. There's no doubt about it. I'm not a person. I realize that's a fake.
Yeah.
I realize that. I want to be in the West. And you try to be in the West. But when you're encountering the system that we're all in, suddenly there are these men in black uniforms or fluorescent uniforms or whatever they are. And you're saying, okay, look, I understand the system. I'm not in that one. I'm over here. And they just go, I'm the one with the truncheon.
Yeah, no, I understand. So again, I that's part of the reason why I launched the website is because it's my way of disseminating this information. It's all evidence. It's like this. It's all information from the state itself. Like the state is founded on the Bible, so it's not too hard to unpick. But I've
No.
had to put myself in a lot of jeopardy, if you like, through the court system, and I've risked a lot of things to find some of this stuff out. And I believe I've got a full picture of how law and governance actually works. So I put that up publicly for free. Most people, you can go there and find it. You'll
Yeah.
understand if you read the first 5 or 6 articles, you will know more about how the system works than your MP, the local police. I mean, you're going to understand a lot very quickly in no time. Just read the articles, you'll
Yes.
find out. So you're right, but so these policemen come from the public. They're our brothers, friends, sisters, family, and
I totally agree.
so the public need to raise their. The public need to take it upon themselves to understand how they're being governed.
Yes.
If the baseline of knowledge was higher, then the people going into the police force would be of a higher knowledge of the system that they're occupied involved in. Like I said, one of the guys, I don't want to name names because it's not about individuals.
No.
One of the guys on stage at this rally was an MP, and he was saying that the Labour don't have the mandate because they've only had 9 million votes. That's not true. They've got the mandate from the Reform voters, from the Tory voters, from the Green
From everyone
Party,
who took part.
from everyone. And the police, as you said, so the MPs don't fully understand how that system works. The police don't fully understand how law, the two sides that they operate in, the people and the persons. But their bosses do. Like when I
And
write
that's
to the,
yes, and I was going to come to that. That's the crux of it. So even
yeah,
though the lower tiers really are confused if you talk in these terms,
yeah, they want you're
the
wasting your
people
time.
at the top, if so, when you said you just say to them, "Sorry, I'm not in your system. I resign. I'm no longer part of your thing," they understand it and they have to abide by it
Yeah, because it's their rules.
because it's their rules.
They were given the they're given the power to act in the ways they're acting from what is said in the Bible. The
Right.
Bible is the royal law, and the citizens are governed by the common law. They're
Yes.
commoners. So
And would that then mean? Sorry to keep
no, no,
interrupting.
no,
I'm just trying to grasp it in my head and
absolutely.
for the audience as well. So would that mean if you've gone to the top? They always say, talk to the top man, never talk to the oily
Absolutely.
rag.
Don't,
You
yes.
go to the top guy and you say, I'm not part of this. The top guy then, understanding you understand the situation.
Yeah.
He then, through the tiers down, say effectively,
They tell the
leave,
brusher uppers, don't
yeah,
leave them alone.
leave them alone.
Yeah, because it's more trouble. They'd be banging trouble. I'll give you for instance, when I first woke up and started looking over my shoulder and think maybe I should be heading east, and I had a little bit of knowledge, and it sort of brought a bit of trouble my way because I started writing to the local police down here, and telling them a few things and what's what, like some of the local chief commanders. And I live down a country lane, as you well know,
Mm.
and I used to get a police car. I never see a police down here. And this is going back years when I used to sort of write to them and tell them what's what and reading the riot act to them. I'd have a police car going up and down this lane once a week at least, maybe twice, and sometimes for a few months. Like if you like, some could see it as intimidations. You could see it as like you're making the wrong arguments here, Clive. But nevertheless, I had a police car going up and down past my place, um, because I was writing these letters and I was still an unruly citizen. I didn't disembark from. I was doing it from the wrong capacity. Let in the wrong status. Let's put it like that.
Mm.
I was waking up. I was still a voter, if you like, or I was still on the duck farm. I was walking like a duck, talking like a duck. I was quacking like a duck. So they thought I was one of their ducks, and I was starting to become a problematic duck on the farm, due for slaughter. So I had to. So they sent some of the local police around regularly to patrol up and down my place. But when I stepped away from that and I stopped writing letters and I undone some of the ties that got me into the system, now that it's different. It's totally different now. They'll avoid they don't. There's no need for them because I'm being governed by the royal law, not the common law. They don't need to police me anymore.
Right.
They don't need to keep an eye on me because I understand the law.
Yes, and you're not in their jurisdiction as such.
Exactly, yeah. And now they swore enough to protect the people. Well, like, I've made it in no uncertain terms that I'm one of the people.
Yes.
So the boot can change, but you don't want to be making these arguments if you're like 250,000 those people. Those people that they weren't people; they were persons of the state, and that's why it might making sense to people now that like that's why the police will charge you with batons and all of this stuff because you're being unruly citizens. that are protesting against your masters, and that's not your position. Just stay at home and like Tommy Robinson nearly took down the BBC by showing people how they can cancel the TV license legally.
Mm.
He's defeated nearly everyone he's come up against. He's a formidable character. If he understood how to just disentangle himself from the government and his followers did the same, that would be a very, very powerful thing indeed. I couldn't think of anything more powerful that could be achieved with a pen and paper. You don't have to go to London. Just do it with a pen and paper. Just like you
Yes.
unclicked, just like you nearly sank the BBC by not funding it and not focusing your attention on it. Instead of looking over there, you started looking over there with the BBC. You can do the same with government. As long as you're dancing to their tune, as long as you're watching the Punch and Judy show, you're fine. They're happy with that. But as soon as you start looking away from the Punch and Judy show and start thinking outside of the box, then yeah, that's why he's dangerous at the moment. Just like I had the police going up and down my place, I was a citizen writing to the bosses, causing them problems, and so they sent a police car up and down regularly.
Mm.
Tommy Robinson is still a citizen of the United Kingdom, causing all kinds of problems, and he's in a dangerous predicament. Like I feel that if he's not careful, they'll see him off. Um, but if he changed his status, then things would be a bit different.
Yes. And so, people watching, I mean, amazingly, we've been speaking for an hour, and
Right.
and we haven't necessarily stuck to the page that you set up. However, it's all there, and
Yeah.
it's a fascinating read. And one of the things I wanted to mention on your website, you have a members area and you have forums, and in the forums, you say, and I find this really interesting. You say that, there's always the remedy is given in the
Yes.
documents they send you. So you may be
Yeah.
holding something that looks like a demand for money, and actually, if you look very carefully, if you know how to read it, the remedy is there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's so true.
And that's no clearer, I think, in what you said earlier about the birth certificate. The remedy is written there that this is not a
Yeah.
document to identify you,
Yeah.
and yet you don't see it. It's like
Well,
the it's
that's
like the
so
word
true.
"don't." You say "don't" to a
Yeah,
child.
yeah.
Don't do that, and they hear "do that," and they
Yeah,
do it. And yet,
absolutely. You just hit the nail on the head there, Richard, with a couple of things you said. A, about the birth certificate. You Once you get a new perspective, you can see these things. But most people have got a common perspective, the perspective of the commoners. They don't
mm,
know about the other tier of law, the other tier of how the law works. They're all trapped and they're in one box called citizens. They
yes,
don't know there's another box. Once you're
no.
stood in the other box and looking back, you're like, wow, that's a crappy box everyone's in. Why not come in my box?
Well, I always say that people are like water, that they'll take the line of least resistance. Once they know that there is a happier, golden place, if you like, that's freer,
Yeah,
they'll flood to it,
yeah,
literally as water does. But all the time we're in ignorance, and we've been made to be in ignorance.
yeah.
The
It's not for
schooling.
everyone. I will say that you have to take on a lot of responsibility, and you're being judged by a higher law. So
Yes.
you really have to you have to, you can't be or just look at some of the things in the Bible. Like number one, stop lying,
Mm.
don't steal, um, tell the truth. Simple things, but I mean we've all broke those commands, me included. I'm not sitting here holier than thou. I was a commoner myself. I was ignorant. I knew nothing. And then I had to educate myself because I really didn't fancy going to prison. Yeah. So I've had to find these things out, and like I said, I've dedicated. Now I owe it to my daughter to um pass this sort of on not only to others but to my daughter. I don't want her. Um, I want her to have a better life than I've had on the lawful side and much more peaceful and not under the jackboot of Keir Starmer.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, listen. I'm gonna have to bring it to a close because we're over the hour. But I think as a taster to get people thinking. And that's all a video really can do, is because it's an analog thing, it's, you know, it's a time duration. If it just gets people going, oh, that's interesting, you have your
Yeah.
website, you have the support page that goes along with this conversation, which is, I mean, so powerful
Yeah.
once people get their idea on it. And it is a personal journey that we all have to make. You can't just, somebody doesn't just go, oh, I'll take you out of that box and put you in there. Yeah, no problem. You've got to
Yeah.
make the effort. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
that's
It
what I've
takes
learned over the last 2 years. It's and it takes time.
absolutely, yeah. It's the process of going from one box to the other that is the release valve, if you like, for the system. They're happy once you've because like you say, it takes some understanding and it takes some courage and responsibility to get from one box to the other. And not everyone's going to do it. It's not for everyone.
Hmm.
But those that get there, and the police are just like, yeah, we don't need to babysit you anymore. Leave us alone. We got plenty to deal with over here.
Exactly. It's like you've grown up and you've become an adult, as it were.
Very much so. Yeah, yeah. Because actually, it's funny you should mention that because on the legal side, you are a ward of the state, and that's an infant. Like you are treated as an infant of the state. And have a look again on the associated page here. What ward means and what district means. That will explain everything in a nutshell. That will tell you the definitions of those words, ward and district, will explain to you why Tommy Robinson's in prison, why Danny Beach, sadly, that farmer lost his farm and was thrown in prison with his wife. Those two definitions will explain why that was so.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for scraping the surface off on this just to whet people's appetite, Clive. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I'm sure I shall be down your way soon. But ladies and gentlemen, be interested in your thoughts and comments on that. Of course, you can put them in the comment box. You can check out the webpage. As we said, it's in the description. But sadly, I have to draw it to a close, which is a shame. But there you go. That is the nature of these videos. And I hope it's given you something to think about. I'll be back with more monologues and more wonderful guests. But in the meantime, from Clive, thank you so much, Clive. Really appreciated that.
Thank you, Richard. Enjoyed it.
And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, see you then. Bye-bye.